please give a warm welcome to the one and only Merrill Reese. Have a seat here, Merrill.
Okay. Well, we start to high school, and I wanted to play basketball in high school, and I wanted to play football. And I went out, I ran when I came into 10th grade, I ran cross country just to get in shape for basketball. But that was my best sport at that time. I was a good little guard. And I came down to practice, first day of practice, and I pulled up at the foul line and I hit a 15-foot jump shot. And I looked over at the sideline to see the coach, and his back was turned. So I came down again, and I saw somebody cutting towards the basket. I threw a perfect pass, perfect assist, and I looked at the coach. He wasn't looking. I came down again. I figure I'll shoot from about 18, and I went swish, and I looked over at the coach, and he still wasn't looking. So the next day I came to practice, and I saw the list on the board, and I was cut. I said, how can I be cut? I didn't do anything wrong. And then a light went on in my head. This was a high school in Philadelphia, Overbrook High School, and that team was recruited from all over the city, and I'll tell you how good they were. 3 of the starting 5 went to the NBA, and I was trying to make that team. So it didn't happen, but I did play other sports, and I played in the football league. I was a quarterback, and I played in the football league for 3 years outside of school. And but when it came to what do I want to be, that was easy. Since I now knew I wasn't going to be a quarterback, I thought the next best thing would be to broadcast the games. Now, I did have a little bit of a background, maybe more than a little bit of a background, because when I was growing up, I loved sports from the very beginning. I would sit next to a radio at 3 or 4 years old and listen to games. My dad was a dentist, and then I would listen to the game and then walk into the waiting room with a ball, hoping that somebody would have a catch with me. But I always loved sports. My mother was a kindergarten teacher, but she was she was also a dance teacher, and she was a competitive figure skater. And so she had that little show business bug for her kids. So she took us around the lessons, and then by the time I was 8, I was registered with an advertising agency, and I did a lot of television commercials, which were live at the time. So I did that until I was 12 years old, and then I was free to just go play sports again. So I did have a beginning.
Yep. And then you ended up going to Temple University.
Majoring in communications.
Yeah.
And by the time I was a sophomore, I was named sports director of the Temple station. And we had a broadcast line at the Palestra. So it didn't matter who was playing. So on Wednesday, I would go down and do a doubleheader. On Friday night, I would go down and do a Penn game. And on Saturday, I would go down and do a doubleheader at night, a Big 5 doubleheader, Penn, St. Joe's, Villanova, LaSalle, and St. Joe's. And then on one Saturday, I came down in the afternoon, and the public league had a triple header. So I did 3 games in the afternoon, grabbed some pizza, and came back and did a doubleheader at night. So I did 5 games in one day.
So a lot of them, they all think of you as a broadcaster for football only. Mm-hmm. But I know you doing Big 5 basketball games, which was, again, the 5 schools. Now they've added a 6th with Drexel University part of that. But you did a lot of college basketball games, and now you're just thought of as a football guy. Mm-hmm. So football, tell them, now this is actually kind of a tragic story about how you ended up becoming the play-by-play voice of the Eagles.
Well, first of all, trying to get ahead, it was tough because after college, I was a naval officer. I was a naval public affairs officer. I was stationed at the Pentagon in Norfolk and at the Academy. And I came out of the service and I had a lot of confidence. And I'd go around to different, first of all, I said, am I going to go to ABC, NBC, or CBS? And I sent resumes and tapes, never heard anything. Then I went around to the Philadelphia stations and I got nothing. Then I auditioned for a job in Coatesville, Pennsylvania. And the station manager, the owner, came out and he said, well, I listened to your audition. You're going to have to start someplace small. Now, this is in Coatesville. What could be smaller than Coatesville? So then I heard that and by the way, years later, when I was already doing the Eagles, I was at a luncheon, and this little old guy comes up to me, and he said, "My name is Bill Halpern. I own the station in Coatesville, and I told you to start someplace small. I was wrong." So I had that. So then I heard that they were looking for someone to do a high school football game in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. And so I went up and I met the owner of the station, and he looked at me and he said, I give you a chance, but you look like you'd have a nervous breakdown. I mean, I hadn't done anything in several years, and I had more doors slammed in my face. And so I said, "You're probably right," and I went home. Friday afternoon, he called me and said, "Listen, I can find absolutely nobody else to do this game tomorrow. It's a choice between you and dead air." So I went up there and I did a Pottsgrove Springford game, and on Monday he called me to come up for a full-time job, and I lasted. I worked for the first 6 months. I worked 7 days a week. It was a daytime station, so I signed the station on the air at 6 o'clock, and I signed the station off the air at night as soon as it got dark. So I did that 7 days a week. 7 days a week, and I got the great salary of $65 a week. And I was there for a year doing everything. And from there, I went to a station in Levittown, and I was there for 2 years. And by the way, years later, I bought that station in Levittown and owned it for 32 years. Yeah. So that's how it all began.
Yeah. All right. So I have tons of questions, but I know your story. I want them to ask questions. So Alan, you put your hand up first, so I'll let Alan go first. Go ahead.
Yeah, so doing high school football games, obviously now you get to do NFL games. Do you still like to go out and watch the occasional high school game whenever you have time?
Well, when my kids went to high school, I did. I'd go out and watch a game on a Saturday. But to be honest with you, I like any kind of football. I watch, if I'm driving by a field and they're playing football, I'll park and go out and watch a quarter. So I do, but I don't see it very often because don't forget, the Eagles play every Sunday or Monday or Thursday or Friday or Saturday. You never know. But I'm so immersed in my job doing football during the season that I don't really have much of a chance. But I watch a lot of college football every time there's a game on. I mean, I love to watch Penn State. So I love to watch the Big Ten. I love to watch. I'm having a ball right now. I mean, I'm sitting there this weekend. I love March Madness. I mean, I watched that Connecticut UCLA game last night. I watched Utah State beat Villanova. I watched Penn beat Yale going into the tournament. I love March Madness. How many of you watch March Madness?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good time, definitely. All right, next question. Where are we going? Right here.
What's been your favorite moment covering the Eagles?
Well, there have been a lot of them, but I will tell you that my very favorite moment would be doing the final play of Super Bowl 52. And I'll tell you a story about that. First of all, I will tell you that I'm nervous before every game. Not about the Eagles winning, but about doing a decent job, because I'm studying all week. I'm memorizing numbers. My wife is quizzing me on the numbers, and especially during the preseason when I'm memorizing 90 numbers of the opponents. So I'm nervous before every game, but once I start, it all goes away. But in Minneapolis, that game was played at US Bank Stadium against the Patriots. Today, you have the worst seats in the house. It used to be that the radio crew had great seats on the 50-yard line. The newer the stadium, the worse our seats, because they save those prime seats for super boxes and for television. So for that game against the Patriots, when that last play was about to begin, now the Eagles are up by 8 points, I am sitting high up in the corner of the end zone, and that play was going to culminate 110 yards away from where I was sitting. Can I use binoculars? No, because you know it's going to be a pass play, and you can't follow a play in the air on binoculars. You can use binoculars for short yardage goal line stands, fumbles, but not for a deep pass. Number two, can I use a monitor? No, because our monitor is on a 5-second delay. So here I am, and the biggest play in Eagles history is about to begin, and I'm thinking to myself, I just hope I don't blow it. I just hope that I'm not known someday as the broadcaster who blew the end of the Super Bowl. And then the play begins, and Brady steps forward, and he stumbles a little bit. Then he cocks his arm and lets go of the ball, and I don't know how or why. But as that play went, as that ball went, it just all slowed down. I saw it almost like an NFL film in slow motion. And then I watched Rodney McLeod leap and touch the ball. And I saw it hit the ground. And during the week, Paul Domwich, who wrote for the Inquirer and the Daily News, did a story on me. And he asked me a question. If the Eagles win, are you going to have something prepared to say? Because your words, whatever you say, are going to be heard forever and ever. And I said, no. I said, all I want to do is, if that ever happens, I want whatever is in my heart to come out of my mouth and just react to it. So sure enough, the ball hits the ground. I look up, I see zeros on the clock, and what came out of my mouth was, it's incomplete. The game is over. The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. And then I said, Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you. Let the celebration begin. That's what came out.
All right, all the way in the back. Go ahead. In the back, left side. Go ahead, Max.
So you have like many iconic catchphrases. Like, it's good. What's your favorite like catchphrase to say like when you're broadcasting a game? Because you have so many iconic ones.
I don't. I mean, it's good if not every field goal, but if it's a really big field goal, it could happen many years ago when the Eagles were playing the Seahawks in Seattle, and the game went into overtime, and it went down to the final second. Now I'm doing 5 full quarters of football, and finally Roger Ruzick was the Eagles kicker at the time, and he stepped forward and hit a 43-yard field goal, and it was just so exasperating that it was over that I went, it's got the distance, it's got the direction, it's good! Thank God we can get out of here. So that was where it's good began. But I save it for a really big game-winning field goal or a 60-yard field goal.
All right, right here.
So from 1977, when you first became the play-by-play head of that role and stuff, up until now in your career, what would you say is like the biggest lesson and or advice you could give to someone like me who's trying to pursue a career in that field?
Well, my advice would not be, people said to me, when you were a kid, did you watch television and pretend to do games? Nah, I didn't do any of that. I was out playing ball. Immerse yourself in sports. Play as much as you possibly can. But I'm going to tell you a little trick. If you want to be a broadcaster, if you want to be an announcer, if you want to be in this business, at any age, become a voracious reader. I read everything. I sit on the plane, I'll read a novel, I'll read a biography, I'll read a sports-related book. I am constantly reading because your vocabulary, which you need to be able to describe things and to paint pictures, your vocabulary comes from reading. That's where these words become part of the script you can use in ad-libbing.
All right, over here.
How did you end up getting that job as the announcer for the Eagles?
How did I end up getting the Eagles job?
Yes.
Well, I was 14, and it was between that and serving newspapers, and I figured this would be more fun. No, I'm kidding. What actually happened was, after I was in Levittown, I finally got into a station in Philadelphia, WWDB, and I was the afternoon newsman. So I would do the news on the hour from 1 until 8. Every hour, 5 minutes of news, 5 minutes of news. It was a talk station, it was news and talk. I went to the program director. I said, how about if I come in every morning at 6 o'clock and do 5 minutes of sports at 6:05, 7:05, and 8:05. And he said, no, this is not a sports station. It's music, it's news. I said, how about if I come in and do the sports 6:05, 7:05, and 8:05 for free? You don't have to pay me for those 3 sportscasts. I suddenly liked the idea with those magic words for free. So I would come in every morning and do 3 sportscasts. Then I lived in an apartment house with tennis courts, and I was a tennis player growing up. And so I would come home and I would go to the tennis courts and give lessons from 9:30 until 11:30. I charged $7.50 a half hour, and then I would run back to the station and do news from 1 to 8. And that got me doing sports on that station. Now, I got a call one day from the sports information director at Temple, Al Schreier, who you probably know, and Al said to me, WIP is looking for a summer replacement for Charlie Swift. Charlie Swift was the sports director of WIP, and he had broadcast the Eagles for about 10 years. And they needed someone. He took a month's vacation. So I went down, this was in February, and I auditioned, but I didn't hear anything. And so I figured, it's just another job I didn't get. And then March came, and they called me to come back for another audition. And I did, but I didn't hear anything, so I forgot all about it. June came, and they called me to come in again. So I'm sitting in the hall, in the lobby, and all of a sudden Charlie Swift walks by, and he said, come here, kid. So I said, oh, okay. And I walked back with him into the newsroom, and he said, next Monday when I'm gone, here's where you'll be sitting, here's where you'll be doing the sports. I said, what? He said, they didn't tell you got the job. So now I went back to WWDB, and I told them I was going to leave to go to WIP and do sports. Now remember, I'm giving up my full-time job for a month at WIP, which I have no idea how it's going to turn out. So I got up and I went in that Monday morning. I got there at 4:30 in the morning to get my sports ready. And at 6:05, I went on with the sports. The newsman did 5 minutes, and he gave it over to me, and I did 5 minutes of sports. Now, the disc jockey on WIP at the time was a guy by the name of Ken Garland. He was the biggest personality in the city. He had all the ratings. And I grew up listening to Ken Garland. And I was scared to death that here's Ken Garland sitting down the hall in his own studio, and he's going to be listening to me. If he doesn't like me, he can pick up the phone and say to the program director, get this kid out of here. So I'm telling you, I'm really nervous. But I give it everything I have, and at 10 after 6, I read the card, and it said, it's 10 past 6, time for the start of the Ken Garland Show. Just like that. And I cut my microphone, and I hear nothing. Nothing. And I'm thinking, oh my, I hit the wrong button. I must have turned the station off the air. But it was the 3 longest seconds of my life. And then I hear a little faint click, and on comes Ken Garland, and what he said was, boy, if I was Charlie Swift, I would hurry home from vacation. And by the time I got off the air, they called me into the general manager's office and signed me to a contract to do the pre and post game show and the pre and post game show and the coaches show. They signed me and to do all the fill-in for Charlie Swift. But for that month that he was away, WWDB told me I didn't have to leave. So I get up at 4, I do the sports at WIP from 6 until 9. I get myself ready for the next day. Then I go back and do news at WWDB from 1 until 8. That was my day, roughly 4 in the morning till 8 at night. Then I go collapse and get up at 4 o'clock the next morning. So that's how it began. I did the pre and post game show for 4 years. Then somebody was sick, and I went in and did the color. When the color commentator retired, they put me in the color job next to Charlie Swift. And then with 2 games to go in the 77 season, Charlie Swift suddenly died. And I got to do the last 2 games of the 77 season, And the following spring, after a nationwide search, they hired me full time. And I've been doing it ever since.
How about that story, huh? How about that? And by the way, look at the effort he put in. This is one of the great broadcasters in our country. And you just heard what he was willing to do early in his career to be able to get ahead.
You have to. That's the only way to do it. Has to mean everything in the world to you. Has to be to be this. It has to mean more to you than anything else that you do.
Well put, Merrill. All right, let me go back to Luke first.
What do you remember most from your days broadcasting at the Palestra, since that's such an iconic venue, and I assume when you were doing it, it was much more lively than it is?
Oh, it was. Yeah, it was. It was Big Five basketball at its best. It's really dissipated, but it was great to do those games. Temple St. Joe's, Villanova St. Joe's. That was the Holy War, they called it. They were great. You got to see great players, great teams came into the Palestra. There were 9,600 fans. You sat there in press row. It was so loud you couldn't hear yourself think. It was unbelievable. I see it now in March Madness. You get a game like Connecticut UCLA last night. I mean, it was piercing. It was great.
Yeah.
Loved it.
By the way, Dan Baker, who was another guest here at Pizza Pros, Glassboro State graduate, 1968, now Ron. Dan did Big Five games. Dan was the Big Five commissioner, executive director.
Executive director of the Big Five. And
but he did games as well back in the day.
Well, in the 1990s, Dan hired me. So I did Penn, St. Joe's, and LaSalle all on the road.
Yeah.
And Dan many times did color.
Yeah. How about that? All right. Go ahead, Alex.
Mr. Reese, you've been the voice of the Eagles for almost half a century.
Yep.
What does that mean to you? And
It means I'm getting old.
Yeah, like.
But I'm not. I don't feel
like,
that way.
Has retirement ever crossed
Never.
your mind?
I hate that word.
I'm sorry.
I hate that word. I will never retire. They will have to remove me with a crane. I'm not going. I love when a mother comes up to me with a little kid who's about 4, and she says, "He's going to take your job one day." I get very defensive. I'm not leaving.
But this is your life, right? This is something that you have loved for so many years.
Neil, would you believe me if I told you I would rather do an Eagles game than play Augusta?
Oof. And he's a golfer, and he loves golf. So that's how much the Eagles mean to him.
Yep.
Wow. All right, go ahead, Ian.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
Best advice you've
The
ever
best
received.
advice I ever received came from my mother. And here's when it happened. When I was in Levittown for 2 years, I mean, I'm there. 2 years is a long time to be at a. Then I was way up to 125 a week, and I'm getting nowhere. And my friends who went into teaching are making more. Other people are going into law school. I even went back to Temple and interviewed for the law school, thinking I'm getting nowhere. But then when they told me the courses, I drove back. I said I have no interest in this. I'm kidding myself. So I'm going to hang in there. So then somebody told me, did I ever tell you this story? Somebody told me that they were auditioning people at KYW Radio for a news job. So I went down and I auditioned. And they gave me a script and I read it. And I felt really good. I didn't mess up one word, no pronunciations, no stumbles, nothing. Then they called me in to see the news director, a guy named Reggie Late. I'll never forget his name. And he called me in and he said, "I'm going to do you a favor." So I'm thinking, I'm going to get a job at KYW, 50,000 watt station. And he said, "I'm going to tell you that you will never work in a major market station because you don't have what we're looking for. We're looking for a different kind of sound. So I'm saving you a lot of aggravation, a lot of heartbreak. You be smart to go into another field." I was crushed. So I came home. I was still at home. And my mother said, "Come on down for dinner." I said, "I'm not eating." So she came up and she said, "What's the matter?" And I told her the story. I said, "He told me I'll never work in a major market. My career is over. My mother said, well, he's right. I expected some motherly love, some sympathy. She said, he's right. So I said, what do you mean he's right? She said, it's all my fault because I raised a weakling. If you're going to let what one person says to you throw you off, you can stay up here all night. I was so mad. I went back, and within 6 months, I had ended up at WWDB, and within 6 months, Reggie Late had been fired.
How about that? So I have heard that story, and it shows you the persistence of this man. And I guess it comes from your mom. Now that I know that, right? Now, mom's
was
one
tough.
yeah, she was tough. All right, next question. Sam, go ahead.
So what was it like getting inducted in the Philadelphia Jewish Sports Hall of Fame?
Every Hall of Fame is nice. They're all nice. They mean a lot, but nothing means more than getting behind that microphone on a Sunday afternoon. Nothing. The Pro Football Hall of Fame was pretty cool. The Eagles Hall of Fame, they're all great. They're all, but they're great honors. But you don't do it for that. You do it for the honor of doing the game and having the fun. But I have a lot of nice plaques.
But the Merrill, Pro Football Hall of Fame, Pete Rozelle Award. That's hard to top.
It is, and I was sitting next to Roger Goodell, and I had to get up and make a speech with all these Hall of Famers down there, and it was being televised. And I said to them, you know what? The last thing I said was, I'm going to tell you a secret. Every game, when we stand for the national anthem, every game, I say something to myself. I say, there's no place in the world I'd rather be, and nothing in the world I'd rather be doing. That's what I say, and that's what I feel.
Go ahead, Justin.
Merrill, is there a player, past and present, that you just love to watch or cover while you're broadcasting?
That's a very good question, because there are a lot of them. I mean, so many great players. I mean, you had one here, Mike Quick. He was so silky smooth. And Harold Carmichael. And the running backs. I mean, the most recent. I mean, you're watching a great player in Saquon Barkley, who leaps over people backwards. And there were other great running backs that I can remember. The greatest Eagle I have ever seen in my tenure, from 1977 to the present day, the greatest Eagle I have ever seen would be Reggie White. I think he is arguably, not even arguably, the best defensive end who ever lived. I think he was the greatest. The most exciting Eagle I have ever seen. See, I have different categories. The most exciting Eagle I have ever seen was Randall Cunningham. You never knew what he was going to do. He had a 91-yard punt. He punted one time. He could run around in circles, leap over people. He wasn't a great student of the game. He wasn't as good as he could have been, but he sure was fun to watch. But other players, the best, well, before Saquon Barkley, the best Eagles running back I saw, and because he has all the records of the Eagles record book, would be Shady McCoy. I mean, he was great. Loved Brian Westbrook. Called a punt return that he took back to beat the Giants. Great player. I mean, they were the best tracker. When you talk about wide receivers, I never saw anybody track a football better, know when to speed up or slow down and still make the catch than Deshaun Jackson. Best tracker of the football. See, there's a lot of different categories. Maybe the best center I ever saw was Jason Kelsey, who could block at different levels. So there are a lot of really great players. But I think 10 years from now, when we look back, and everybody has varying opinions, but 10 years from now, when we look back, we're going to say that Jalen Hurts is the greatest quarterback in modern Eagles history. He will fit that, and he will one day be in the Hall of Fame. And last year, on a Friday night, I was at this big ball where we got our Super Bowl rings from Super Bowl 59. And it's an amazing ring. You push a little button and wings jump out. It's incredible. It was a great thrill to be there, and I emceed part of it. But the following week at training camp, did I tell you this? I was sitting in a chair in the press tent after practice, just sitting there. And somebody came out of the locker room with a big box, and they said, "This is for you." I said, "Me? What is it?" I open up this big box, and there's a brand new pair, never used, of custom Air Jordan Eagles cleats. And on the white part of the cleat is handwritten to M. Reese. You saw it when nobody else could. Love always, Jalen Hurts. That meant more to me than the ring.
That's a pretty bold statement, Merrill, about what you're saying about Jalen Hurts down the road.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I do.
You did a lot of basketball. Most popular Eagle in your mind in the 50 years that you've been around the team?
Most popular Eagle. I don't think there was. I'll tell you who might be there. Brandon Graham. Everybody loves Brandon Graham. If you bump into Brandon Graham when you go to the facility and he sees you and comes up and hugs you, your whole day just got better. He might be the most popular. Jason Kelsey is right there. Jason Kelsey's right there. It's extremely, extremely popular.
Brian Dawkins?
Oh, Doc was absolutely great. Great. He'd be right up there.
Yeah.
He'd be right there. Dawkins was absolutely great. But, I mean, Harold Carmichael, way back, was a great player. He's in the Hall of Fame. So, but in my tenure, I would still say, I just saw how they reacted when BG retired last year. They just love him.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. Go ahead, Kate.
So you guys have covered a couple Super Bowls for the Eagles, honestly. There's a debate between the 2017 team and the latest Super Bowl winning team on if they went at it, who would win. So who, in your opinion, between 2017 and 2025?
No question about it. No question about it. Super Bowl 59, that team. That team, look at their offensive line. You know, I love Nick Foles, and he did some great things, but you can't compare him to Jalen Hurts. You can't. You look at the guys on that team and what they did. Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell are amazing. Zach Bourne came up with a big interception. It's just, that was a good team, obviously. Don't get me wrong, but that team in 2018, they snuck by the New England Patriots. No, that's a big deal. This team annihilated the Kansas City Chiefs. And you want to know something? I agree with everybody that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the National Football League. But 4 times in a row, the last 4 times they met, Jalen Hurts has outplayed Patrick Mahomes. Remember that.
Very good. All right. All the way in the back.
What's it like being partners with Mike Quick?
Being partners with Mike Quick?
Yeah.
It's like sitting down with one of your closest friends and enjoying a game. And that's the impression we'd like to create, because there's so much going on in the booth, so many commercials, so many things going on with our producer, things to read, statistics, everything. But Mike and I are really good friends off the air too. So, and that doesn't always happen. There are broadcast teams that Neil can tell you about where the two guys working didn't even like each other. So we had it in the history of the Phillies once upon a time.
Yes.
But to sit with Mike and I are good friends. We really are. It's great. It's a great pleasure.
And proud to say professional in residence here at Rowan. So if you go to inside the front office or you go to my class, Philly Sports Past and Present, Mike is a regular contributor. Some of those guys are nodding right now that they have been there when Mike Quick is coming. And Mike has had surgery, so the guys in my class, Jake, you know, he'll be coming soon to our class, but he just had knee surgery and he's on the mend right now, but he'll be back soon.
Yeah,
But
Mike's the best. Now I'm going to say something to you, and if I said it on WIP, I don't care if you said this on WIP, but if I said this on WIP, people would be fighting and screaming and clawing each other's eyes out for an hour. I'm going to tell you that Jalen Hurts is a better quarterback than Josh Allen.
Oh, that's first
You don't want
Wait a minute. Please. Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question? How many Super Bowls has Josh Allen won? Let me ask you another question. Josh Allen has enormous ability, but he doesn't play under control. He threw away that playoff game. He got Sean McDermott fired. What did he do against the Eagles this year in the rain? He fumbled backwards and they lost 54 yards. Then he came down to the goal line. All he has to do is go dink. When they win, he goes dink 50 yards over the guy's shoulder. Please.
And he's already.
Huh?
And it was downpouring. I was there. It was not fun.
Okay.
So obviously Merrill loves Jalen Hurts. We've gotten
I
that
do.
abundantly clear
Listen,
here tonight.
I don't say that Josh Allen's not a great quarterback, but he has not been a prolific winner.
He's never had the roster jars.
He's had some great receivers. It's not the roster didn't fumble the ball at halftime when he was tied, and then he gives up 2 turnovers. The roster didn't do that. He did it all by his little old self.
All right, so let's all right. Let's go right here. Go ahead, Xander.
What best advice would you have for people? I mean, when we're in college and it can sometimes feel like life is going by like way too fast. What's your advice to just kind of make it, like stop and smell the roses?
To do what?
Like just stop and smell the roses, I guess. Like what's your best
Stop and
advice?
smell the roses.
Enjoy every day. I mean, I didn't work at the station for next to nothing in Pottstown and say, I'm going to get out of here. I enjoyed every day. Enjoy every day you spend in college and get the most out of it, but still have fun. Enjoy every day.
All right. Go ahead, Gene.
Earlier you talked about vocabulary. Over time, do you think your vocabulary got better and better? When you look at a guy like Doc Emmerich who did hockey, he almost created words like waffle board and stuff. Do you find yourself almost creating terms? Does your vocabulary get better over time?
No, I don't create words. I don't mean that. But the words that I need to best describe something come to me. Don't use a 3-syllable word if you have a 1-syllable word that works. Don't search for that. Don't try to do that. But certain words do come out of your mouth. I mean, the Eagles were playing the Lions and they were behind. And the word that came out of my mouth is the Eagles have got to move with alacrity, meaning with a sense of urgency. I mean, that's just a quick example. But the more words that you know, the more accurate you can be in your description.
And we always tell the broadcasters, varying your terms, right? To use different words to describe
Well,
the same thing.
every summer, Neil, I'll listen to 3 full games and just sit there and with a legal pad and say, I said this too much. I should have said this. And I'll tell you something else. I've never done a perfect game in my life. When Charlie Swift was in the booth with me and I was doing the color, he said to me one day, he said, kid, you don't call me kid. He said, we say thousands of things in the course of a football game. Some of them are going to be wrong. You can't be perfect. We're not newspaper writers where they have editors who can say, you spelled this wrong or there was no comma there. When it's out, it's out. So don't be too hard on yourself.
Okay. Go ahead, Andres.
How do you find ways to improve while doing your play-by-play stuff, like over 50 years?
While you do it, like I said, you listen. Don't go crazy with that, but you listen, and in the off season, play the tapes and listen to it very, very critically. That's the way to do it, but not during the season. You'll drive yourself nuts.
Right here.
Being as though most fans think this past season was a harder watch based on the offense, was it harder to commentate, like with the vanilla offense and everything like that?
Kevin Patullo got a lot of criticism. It wasn't. Now you're going to disagree with me again, I know, but it wasn't Kevin Patullo. It was the offensive line. I'm going to tell you a story. Once upon a time, there was a guy by the name of Sid Gillman, Gillman. You can Google him. You can look him up. He was the most brilliant offensive mind in the history of the National Football League. In fact, he was the inventor of the West Coast offense. He taught it to Bill Walsh, who used it for the 49ers. So many, many, many years ago, when Dick Vermeil was the coach, Sid Gillman was his offensive source. So I used to talk to him all the time, and here's how nice he was. He allowed me to come into his little office and watch game film with him. It was film then, not tape. And he'd say, watch this. And I'd already be there when he'd cutting up film, and he'd explode. It was like a master's class in offensive football. So one night, before playing Washington, we were staying at the Crystal City Marriott and in Virginia. And I walked up to Sid in the lobby, and I said to Sid, Coach, how do you use the hash marks in what you're doing offensively? And he had heard from me enough. He said, Merrill, sit down. So I sat down, and he said to me, tomorrow, when we play Washington, and every week, there are always 60,000 offensive geniuses sitting in the seats. If you asked any of these offensive geniuses who said, the Eagles should have done this on this play, ask them, what was the defense in? They don't know. They don't know if they're in a Tampa 2 or a single high safety. They're not watching the defense. They're watching the offense. How many of you go to the game and concentrate on what the defensive scheme is? What you do offensively is predicated on what the defense does. So he said to me, tomorrow when we line up against Washington, we know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to give the ball to 44. If you've never heard of him, 44 was a great running back by the name of John Riggins. And they're going to run a counter tray, which is go against the grain off right tackle. And he said, you know what? We're going to have our backsides handed to us because we can't stop them. He said, the most overrated thing, this is not me, this most overrated thing in football is play calling. It's all about execution. I don't know how many of you ever saw tapes or film of the great old 49ers teams. And we knew exactly what was going to happen. Joe Montana was going to take the snap. Jerry Rice was going to run a quick slant over the middle. Montana would deliver to Rice, and he'd run 80 yards for a touchdown because they couldn't stop it. Play calling is overrated. That's the truth.
How about that? All right, very good. Right here.
In your time with the Eagles, has there been a moment that's underrated to the public but stood out to you?
Something that is underrated,
Like a moment that not many people talk about.
not many people talk about. Well, I think people talk about it, but don't focus on it because when Saquon Barkley makes a great run, there's great blocking that is created. Now, here's the thing. The difference between this past year, and last year, when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, they had the best offensive line in football. Now, listen to this. This year, when Saquon Barkley ran the football, he was hit within 1 yard, most of the time, of the line of scrimmage. Last year, when they had the great year with Barkley, he was 3 yards downfield before anybody touched him. That was because of the offensive line. This year, you had Cam Jurgens coming back after back surgery, Landon Dickerson hurt most of the time, in and out of the lineup. On the other side, Lane Johnson missing the last 8 games. Offensive line is the most underrated part.
Good answer, Merrill. Good answer. Who's that? Go ahead. I can't even tell who that is. Go ahead. Is that you, Derasmus?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So I just want to ask you real fast because I've been listening to you my entire life, and you've been doing this for 50 years, which is very remarkable. What do you think has led to your longevity?
2 things. My passion and my desire to spend 40 to 50 hours a week preparing for every 4 hours I spend in the booth. That's number 1. And number 2, actually feeling that it's the most important thing to me, and I love it. And I have certain little tricks that I use. I will not go into a noisy room the night before a game where there's a band playing or anything else. I don't want that because I'm going to have to talk for 4 hours. I will not talk on the phone other than a few words here and there the day before a game because we tend to use our voice more and project more than we do when we're just talking. So I try to take care of my voice, but more than anything else, the fact that I love it more than anything else in the world, and I throw myself into it, and I approach each game the same way. That, I've done all these games, but I feel going into every game that somebody is going to hear me for the first time. And that person who is hearing me for the first time is going to judge my entire body of work on what I did that day. I want to be at my best every single game. I'm not, because I'm a human being, but that's my goal.
Very good. Go ahead, Aiden.
Like the week of you prepping for each Eagles game, what is the most important thing you really look at, taking a deep dive at when you're doing your prep?
Well, number one is memorization. So I've got to get those numbers memorized of everybody. And you go into a preseason game, you're memorizing 90 opponents. So you've got to memorize everything. Number two, you've got to really be focused. I look at game tape, and I'll tell you something else I do. When you're in the league, when you're broadcasting, as I have been for all these years, you get to know so many coaches who have passed through the Eagles. Like John Harbaugh, when he was the Eagles special teams coach, used to come over to my house on Saturdays and we'd go out and play 18 holes. And I could call John anytime I want. Look, I'll show you something right now. I'm gonna read you a text from me. Hi, D'Amico. You got a really good guy in Reed Blankenship. He's got excellent instincts, good ball skills, and is also a leader. You couldn't ask for a player with higher character. Best wishes, Merrill. Hey, Merrill. Congratulations on the 50-year milestone. Appreciate you sharing the great insights on Reed. We were excited to work with him for sure. Wish you all the best, D'Amico. So this happens all the time. I'm in contact with D'Amico. Now, if the Eagles are playing somebody and Houston played them 2 weeks ago, I'll call D'Amico and say, what can you tell me about the Bengals? Or what can you tell me about this that I could throw? I call Harbaugh all the time. I call, you know so many people around the league. Sean McDermott. I'll call Sean McDermott and say, I think Jalen Hurts is better than Josh Allen. So but you have people that you can talk to all the time.
That's a great. And by the way, D'Amico Ryans is one hell of a guy.
He's a great guy.
Wonderful guy. Go ahead, Lena.
What inspired you to write your book and getting to writing in general?
Writing your book and writing in general.
Well, I did do a book, a biography called It's Good, back in 2010 with a writer. But a much better book is presently being written. And it was sold to Temple Press, and it's going to come out between next Christmas and the Super Bowl. It'll probably be on sale, pre-orders in Christmas. And it's called His Story, Merrill's 50 Years with the Eagles by Cindy Reese.
Wow. So you get your wife to write a book about...
No, she wanted to do it. She insisted, and she gave me assignments. She put tapes on my desk. Tell me about this, tell me about this, tell me about this. And then she wrote it. And now we're going through the editing process.
Tell them about your kids. Tell them about your kids.
I have 2 kids. I have a son, Nolan, who is in Hollywood, and he was the visual effects editor for Bad Boys 3, Bad Boys 4, Creed 3, a lot of these big movies. He just did one that was on HBO called R.I.P., RIP, with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. He did that. He's a film editor in Hollywood. He's done great. And he's a big Eagles fan, and he'll meet me on the road and keep our stats. I call him Hollywood Nolan Reese. And I gave him the nickname. Not to be confused with Hollywood Brown. But Al Michaels has a spotter, and he always refers to him. I want to thank my spotter, Malibu Kelly Hayes. So if he can have Malibu Caves, I can have Hollywood Nolan Reese. And I have a daughter. So he went to Boston University. And my daughter went to Syracuse and then got her master's at Pratt in graphic design, and she's a great artist. And she has 2 kids, 7-year-old son named Ollie. He'll be the next best athlete. He's a great little golfer at 7, and he plays baseball, basketball, and flag football. And a little girl named Audrey who cries.
That's great. That's great. All right, right here.
I gotta ask about my favorite Eagle of all time, Brian Dawkins. What kind of stories do you have about him and that you would like to share?
Brian Dawkins was the fiercest hitter that you will ever see. Brian Dawkins would take your head off. Off the field, he was the most mild-mannered, soft-spoken, wonderful individual you would ever see. Another thing about Brian Dawkins could not be playing football today the way he did then, or he'd be penalized for personal fouls and illegal hits 90% of the time. And the same goes for Palomalo and Ed Reed of the Ravens. The game has changed. But what he did best was he was a headhunter.
Okay, we'll go right here first. Go ahead, Mason. Over here.
Over your 50 years covering, you've watched a lot of football. How have you seen the game kind of evolve, and is there a specific scheme that has stood out to you throughout your time? Because there's been a lot of great coaches and a lot of great game developments over the years.
Well, it's evolved, and then it always goes back and forth. It went from primarily a running game to a passing game, and now more running attacks are coming back. It is constantly changing. And it usually happens that one team wins a Super Bowl or a series of Super Bowls, and suddenly it becomes a copycat league, so that everybody puts in a West Coast offense. But it's always going to change and go back and forth.
Okay, go ahead.
Who's your favorite broadcaster that you listen to, current or past?
My favorite broadcaster?
Yep.
Did you say?
Yep, favorite broadcaster.
Well,
current or past?
Okay, past you wouldn't know the names. There was a broadcaster who used to do the Green Bay Packers primarily on television by the name of Ray Scott, who was a minimalist, didn't overtalk. I don't like overtalking, especially on television, but he would go star, dollar, touchdown. He was great. And locally there was a broadcaster who unfortunately you're all too young to have heard to any degree, named Bill Campbell, who was my hero growing up.
He did Will Chamberlain's 100-point game.
Yes.
Oh, wow. There you go. Bill Campbell.
Yes.
Go ahead, Alex.
Okay. This is probably a dumb question, but did that game really happen? Like, did he really score 100 points? There's no proof or evidence that it really happened.
Oh, there's evidence. There are score sheets from that game. There are people who were at that game. There is a tape that they found of Bill Campbell describing that game, but it did happen.
Yeah. Right here, Christian, right here, he doesn't believe it happened either. No. So because there's no video of it, right? There's no video.
But I listened to it on the radio.
I'm a visual guy.
That was a good answer. Go ahead, Ian.
Okay, I have a question.
By the way, there's no video of the Eagles winning the World Championship in 48 and 49. Did that happen?
See, that's a little different. But yeah.
Okay.
Good answer.
I need you to settle a little debate for me.
Okay.
Peyton Manning or Patrick Mahomes, all time?
From an ability standpoint, Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is amazing. However, Peyton Manning, we're going to get an argument again. You're just waiting for me, I know. Peyton Manning, to me, was a better quarterback than Tom Brady, even though Brady is the GOAT because he's won 7 Super Bowls. But Peyton Manning went on that field and called the plays. He was the offensive coordinator in Indianapolis and in Denver. And when he called Omaha, he was the commander. I thought he was great. But I would have to say, from a sheer ability standpoint, Mahomes has done things I've never seen before.
Okay. Do you agree with that?
No.
Okay. Go ahead, Sam.
I know your favorite was Y.A. Tittle.
No, he doesn't. Go ahead, Sam.
Thank you for the Mahomes propaganda. Love it. So back to your Hurts comment of him being below Josh Allen. Where do you have Hurts in your top rankings?
Like current quarterbacks today? Current quarterbacks.
Top 5.
Where? 1, 2, 3, 4.
It depends on the week.
23rd, 2026.
Maybe 4th.
All right.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I have a question. So, Peyton Manning won his first Super Bowl at 30, and Josh Allen's still 28. Is it that big of a deal that Allen hasn't got over the hump yet? Since Manning has never got over, but he's better than Mahomes already.
Well, only time will tell. Only time will tell. But see, the thing about Josh Allen is he turns over the ball too much. Dick, you know what? There's a thing in the Eagles auditorium, right behind where they stand for press conferences. It's up high, and it says the most important things that you have to remember as a football player. Do you know what number 1 is? Ball security. Ball security. Ask any coach. Ball security is the most. He turns it over too much. He's too reckless. Does he have great skills? He's got amazing skills. Is he tough? Great. He's a great guy. He does amazing things, but at the worst possible moment, at the biggest possible moment, he tries to do too much. He plays outside of it. He does not practice ball security, and that is a critical mistake. I'm not arguing about who's more gifted. I'm just telling you that his resume of work, he turns it over too much.
How about that? An hour with Merrill Reese.